Hey everyone. Sorry I couldn't be there in person, but thank you, Natalie, for having me here. My name is Laura. I'm a social worker, and I've been an advocate in my personal life and my professional life for many, many years. I really thought I had a pretty good understanding of women's health issues and how to speak up for myself till I was hit by perimenopause. I started going from doctor to doctor with all these different symptoms, and I didn't really think any of them were connected to each other because they were just so different and so strange. Then I started to piece together the puzzle slowly and realized it was all connected. It was all perimenopause. What was really frustrating to me was, even though I had been an advocate professionally and personally, I just wasn't able to make my voice heard, and it was so frustrating. So I want you to learn from my mistakes, and hopefully we can avoid that. So in our time together, I'm going to talk about 3 things that I think are really important. What I wish I knew back a few years ago was that you really need to educate yourself about what's going on with your body, about what providers know and don't know, about all the treatments that are available. You also need to learn to advocate for yourself so that your voice can be really strong. But you also need to learn to advocate for others because people are struggling right along with you. They might not have a voice that's as strong as yours. And lastly, you're going to need to learn how to navigate a really complicated system. Our healthcare in the US is very complicated. Paying for treatment can be just as complicated. So I'm going to show you some tricks that I learned and how to do that, hopefully successfully. So first, we're going to talk about the need to educate ourselves. We have to understand what's going on with our own bodies and the reason we're experiencing these symptoms, and also treatments available. But as we're going to talk about in a second, you also need to possibly be able to educate your providers because menopause just is not very well understood yet. In fact, the sad reality is that women and women's health issues just aren't studied. In fact, until 1993, women were excluded from clinical research trials. This fact has had serious and continual impact on women's health issues today. So while a lot of money gets put into things like erectile dysfunction, medications like Viagra, receive a tremendous amount of funding, but women's issues, we just don't. Hopefully this is starting to change, but until now, that's just the landscape that we're dealing with. In fact, many doctors aren't even comfortable speaking to us about menopause. A recent study found that only 6.8% of soon-to-be doctors felt comfortable speaking to their patients about menopause. So if they're not comfortable and we're not comfortable, we're just all going to suffer. Another study by Johns Hopkins found that only 20% of OBGYN training programs offer education on menopause at all. Even when they do, those courses are usually elective. And doctors that you see today, doctors that are really well established in their practice, they might still be quoting outdated information. This can be a really significant problem because in menopause, you could be undertreated and just not receive the care you need for your symptoms. We really need help. Every day, 6,000 women in the US alone reach menopause. The symptoms that we have can be anything from mild to so severe that they interfere with their work, their family, their friends, just their quality of life. And 84% of women find that the symptoms are just so hard to deal with. The reality is, we really have to save ourselves. There's no cavalry coming. There's no prince swooping in to save us from menopause. We have to know what's going on. We have to educate our providers. We have to advocate for ourselves. Unfortunately, there's a lot of false and misleading information about menopause, so it's really important that you rely on accurate information. So where do we find that information? First, just look for reliable sources, especially online. If you're on a web page with a lot of information, but it's really geared towards selling a product to you, beware. They're trying to make money off of you. Menopause is poised to be a multi-billion-dollar industry. So people are realizing that we have money and we have needs, and we're going to try to solve our problems ourselves. But just look for really reliable sources, like ones that end in .gov or .org. Those tend to be more science-driven and more factual-based sources. Also, you can follow the guidelines of NOMS, the North American Menopause Society, and ISHWISH, the International Society for the Study of Women's Sexual Health. The other thing that I do too is I look for reputable leaders on social media. I follow NOMS, I follow ISHWISH, and then I follow a lot of their leaders, people that are on their boards, that are very vocal. And then I also look to see who's reposting them, who's following them, so that I make sure that I'm getting my information from really reliable sources. So once we have that information, then it's time to put it all to use. By being an advocate, this is the time that you find your voice, speak up for yourself, and once you find that voice, speak up for others who also just may feel very silent at this time. Finding your voice is pretty hard, but only the first time. It gets easier and easier, I promise. The first time we speak up is always the hardest. Remember our mother's generation, they really didn't question anything that a doctor said. So we're kind of breaking ground here. First time I questioned my doctor, I was so scared. I thought they were going to walk out of the room, fire me as a patient, but they didn't. And it gets easier and easier. You want your voice to be confident, and having that knowledge that we talked about, that's going to be power for you. So how do you make sure that you feel confident and strong so that your voice can be heard? You have to be prepared. For your doctor appointments, I want you to do a couple things. Bring your symptom checklist with you so that you can go over with your doctor everything that you think is happening. Remember, these appointments are time limited and your doctor is going to be watching the clock. So prioritize the issues that you want to talk about at that appointment and make sure you have enough time for some in-depth discussion. Understand what treatment you're asking for, if any, and why you want this prescribed. It's really helpful to know the guidelines for the prescription of each medicine that you might be talking or asking for too. Be prepared to share information and resources during your appointment. I have studies that I think I might have to, quote, printed in my bag with me. If you're denied any test or any treatment, make sure you ask that that's documented in your medical record, including the reason that your doctor is saying no. Remember, there's something called shared decision making. So you do not just have to go to a doctor and take what they say as the absolute golden rule. You have a responsibility to be a shared decision maker in any care that's provided to you. And that means having a say in what treatments you receive. So if you have to advocate for yourself with your doctor, do that as best that you can, because you want a treatment plan that helps you find a workable solution, because it's your quality of life. Remember to plant seeds of information and advocate for others during your appointment. So I just do this by asking questions. I might say to my provider, hey, I read this study that said almost 70% of UTIs can be prevented with the use of vaginal estrogen. So does that change how you're prescribing to your patients? They might not have an answer, but it'll start them thinking about how they should change maybe how they prescribe things. Or I might ask them something like, hey, I'm a social worker. I work with people with disabilities, and not everybody uses words to talk. So how do you make sure that you're addressing any menopausal issues with your women that are older that might be experiencing that, but maybe can't voice that to you? Or I might say, gosh, I read this study and I brought it with me. It's really fascinating that women of color experience menopause longer and their symptoms are sometimes more severe. So how do you make sure that those patients that you're working with are telling you all these symptoms and they're being able to be treated the way they should be? Anything that kind of starts that seed of them thinking, like, maybe I should look into this a little bit more. After your appointment, make sure you share any additional resources that you mentioned with your provider. You can email them. A lot of clinics have patient portals that you can send to them, just so that they know that you're a really reliable source of information. Lastly, if things don't go great, be prepared to seek a second opinion, and that's okay. Sometimes doctors just don't know and they're not the best fit. So you can have a second opinion, third opinion, fourth opinion, whatever you need. But don't stop just by talking to your provider. You can find ways to bring the subject up and help advocate for people in your everyday life. Talk to your family and friends. Normalize that conversation of, let's talk about this. Talk to your friends that are your age. Talk to your friends that are younger so that they know what they might be going through. It can be something casual like, oh, I was just reading about my menopause the other day, and did you know this and this? They might not know it, and they might be going through the same thing that you're going through. Share resources. Share resources with your friends, link to interesting articles, share things on Facebook, Instagram. You might be surprised how many people reach out to you and say, I was going through the same thing, but I didn't know that's what it was. Plant those same seeds of curiosity with your friends. It might be quoting studies about elderly women and UTIs, like I mentioned, or the way that women of color do go through menopause harder and longer. And, just bring those subjects up and ask to talk about it with your friends so that they start thinking too about these issues, because you never know who it's going to affect. Understand that disparities in healthcare are real. People do walk through the world with different privileges than other people, and their experience with their doctor might be very different than my experience with my doctor. Understand that, be willing to advocate for them, ask if there's anything you can do, and really raise awareness, and that hopefully will level some of those disparities. Now we're going to talk about how to navigate this whole landscape. In the US, we have a very, very complex medical system. So to get the care and the treatment you deserve, you definitely have to know some tricks. First, finding a provider. We talked about the lack of education amongst a lot of doctors. The one thing I found that's very frustrating is, although there is a lack of education, I hardly ever found a doctor that didn't attempt to treat me for menopause, even though they were quoting outdated information. Those are the doctors that I really want you to try to avoid. So let's talk about some ways you can find a competent doctor. So a couple ways we're going to talk about the NOMS, the North American Menopause Society directory, and the ISHWISH providers. So let's start with the NOMS directory. You go to the North American Menopause Society webpage. It's menopause.org. Here on their first page, you're going to see for women, find a menopause practitioner. So you're going to click on this link, and it's going to take you to kind of a disclaimer page. It'll say find a menopause practitioner, and I want you to notice right under here, it talks about what an NCMP is. I feel that that's very important. So I want you to click on that when you're on that web page, and it's going to tell you what is an NCMP. North American Menopause Society has 2 levels of membership. So for one level, the NCMP, those doctors have to take a test and prove that they're certified, prove that they meet a certain competency level to be listed as an MCMP. So I really think that you should look for those doctors because they are just showing a little bit more dedication to the care of menopausal people. You can click here for more information also that goes in more into depth on the kind of testing that those doctors have to take. So when you're looking at the listing of doctors, you're going to type in your zip code under that directory, and then you're going to have all your doctors listed. And way here on the left-hand corner that I've made a little snippet of, you're going to see which doctor is accepting new patients. Are they an NCMP? Which doctor is just a regular member? She's accepting new patients? And look at down here. These doctors are just NOMS members. They're not NCMPs. So I know some of us live in a rural area, so this is going to be You might only have NOMS members in your area, but if you can, try to look for those people that have gone a little bit farther to be certified in menopause care. Next, we're going to talk about ISWISH providers. So ISWISH, the International Society for the Study of Women's Sexual Health, which is kind of a mouthful, they aren't specifically menopause providers, but a lot of them are really passionate about one thing in general, which is the genitourinary symptoms of menopause. They really are leaders in this field. And a lot of them are also certified menopause practitioners. So I really strongly suggest looking at their directory as well. Theirs is pretty similar. You go to their website, and then you're going to find a provider. The golden ticket is if you could find an NCMP and an ISWISH provider as well. That would be somebody that's really, really passionate about things that are happening to women. I also recommend following ISWISH on their social media, Instagram, Facebook. They do a lot of free webinars about menopausal issues that are just very informative. Next, of course, we definitely have to think about verifying your coverage. So you'll have your list of doctors, and then you're going to also want to make sure that they take your insurance. If they don't take your insurance, it's not the end of the world. You can ask your insurance provider if they will allow you to see this person under your deductible rate, or you can negotiate with that provider and ask if you can pay a lower out-of-pocket rate. That's always a possibility. I really want you also to read the reviews of these providers. Remember that clinic may be editing out the bad comments. Not always, but some clinics do that. So read just the regular reviews online too. But take some of those reviews with a grain of salt, because remember, most people with good experiences don't take that extra step to go online and write a positive review. But people with a bad experience are more prone to do that. So read the reviews, kind of take them with a grain of salt, but it's kind of good to keep in the back of your head, especially if you're trying to decide between a couple of providers. So lastly, my favorite subject, paying for your treatment. We have to navigate through everything. We've got the providers, we have our prescription of what we want for treatment, and now we have to pay for it. And that can be just a shock in itself and very frustrating. But you can use the tips I'm going to give you, not just for any menopausal treatment, but for all of your medications. It could save you a lot of money. I still can't wrap my head around this, but it's true. Your insurance does not always save you money. That doesn't seem right. I pay insurance every month. That should be the best option for me to save money on all my treatment, all my medication. It's just not the way it is right now. So I'm going to give you 5 steps to save money on your medication. And this is going to be a handout too, or I can certainly send any of you that want this handout. So the first thing you're going to do is when you have a prescription, make sure that your provider notes that you can get that filled with a generic if it's available. Then we want to make sure you check your benefits. Know your drug formularies, know your drug tiers, know your copay amounts. A lot of insurance providers have an app that you can use, and you can just put in the name of a medication. It will tell you, based on your insurance, what you're going to pay. Then we're going to look at drug savings cards. There's many out there. Single Care, GoodRx. I have on a spreadsheet about 5 of these drug saving cards, and it's amazing the difference in prices just between these cards. So I have a few bookmarked. Then we also want to look at online options. Cost Plus Drugs, Amazon Pharmacy, those are good options for getting your medication delivered right to your home. Lastly, we're going to look at a manufacturer's page if it's a name brand medication for a further discount. So this can be kind of overwhelming. So I want to walk through some medications just based on my insurance coverage. And keep in mind that I have fairly good insurance. So first, let's do estradiol, which is vaginal estrogen. People are pretty familiar with that. So if I just went in, my insurance is not going to want to pay for that very much, $74 for a month. That's not great. But my friends, some of them are being charged $90 to almost $200. So mine's like not great, but not as bad as some that I've seen. But let me see if I can get that a little cheaper. So I looked on GoodRx. All right, you can kind of see here. GoodRx, if I go to Walgreens, and this is based on my zip code, so it's going to be different for everyone, but this is just based on my zip code. If I take my GoodRx coupon, go to Walgreens, I'm going to save 50 cents. So that's not too much money, but it's a little. But if I use the same drug savings card and go to Walmart, I'm going to pay $41 a tube. So now I'm starting to actually save a little bit of money. But I think I can probably do a little bit better. So if I go online to Cost Plus Drugs, notice this without using my insurance, I can get this for $20 a month. So that's quite a bit of savings just on one medication. This is pretty simple to use. It's very well detailed on their website for providers, how to call in the medication, and then that gets delivered right to your home. So that's a nice little option too. So let's look at another medication. This is for a topical estradiol gel, so systemic HRT. My insurance is not happy about me having that. If I use this, they want me to pay $320.90 a month. And that's really cost prohibitive for a lot of people. So let's see what happens with this one. We're going to look at the coupons. So Walmart, all right, I got that down to about half, $123 to $155. So that's a savings. Remember, this is not using my insurance. But if I go to Walgreens, this time they're cheaper. It's $59 a month. So significantly cheaper than using my insurance. But I'm not convinced that we can't do even better. So since this is a name brand medication called Divigel, let's go to their webpage. We're going to go to divigel.com, and they have a section called Start Saving. So if we click on that, it's going to come up with all the terms and conditions that they want you to look at to get this drug savings program. So with Divigel, if you read the fine print, it says if you use your insurance this time, if you use your insurance, they're going to pick up the difference in the cost of the medication, the cost of your copay, to bring it down to $25 a month. So now it's a significant savings. There is some fine print in here also that talks about how you cannot use this if you have Medicare, some different programs like that. But this could be a significant savings for your medication. So do use all these steps for all of your medications. I found that with mine, and I do not take a lot of medication, but I'll still save almost $1,000 a year just by using all of these tips. So that's our time together. I hope you've learned 3 things that I love, which are to educate for yourself so that you know your symptoms. Educate yourself so that you can talk to your doctors, you can talk to your friends, you can talk to your family so that they understand everything too. Learn to find your voice. Although it's really scary that first time, learn to advocate for yourself, because you'll find as your voice gets stronger and stronger, you're going to want to advocate for other people too. So go out there and do that. Lastly, I want you to take those navigation skills out so that you can find a good provider, so that you're not suffering, that you learn how to work the system to make everything in your advantage, and to navigate the cost of those medications so that you have money for the things that you love doing. So lastly, if you want to get a hold of me, I have my email address up here. I'm sure Natalie can give it to you too. I did just start an Instagram account just so I can share more of these resources as I find them. You can find me at the Burning Club, and I'll have that link available. So thanks for letting me pop in. Good luck.